one more short story. Hello and welcome to One More Short Story with me, Chris Fulwell. We have another brilliant episode here today. I'm really excited about sharing these 3 stories with you. The theme of today's episode is supernatural. There are other links I could make between the 3 stories, but I don't want to spoil anything at this stage. It's not as straightforward as to say they're all sci-fi or they're all fantasy or they're all X, Y or Z, because that wouldn't quite do it. I think going with supernatural for the moment is a fair link to make. As is the usual routine, the description of the podcast will contain links to all 3 of the stories, which will take you to the Writing Battle website if you would like to either read the stories before or check out the content warnings. If they are of any benefit to you, you can do that. Thank you for your continued support of One More Short Story. If you're interested in something a little different, starting next week, so towards the end of April, I'll be launching One More Short Story Premium, which I'm really excited about. The essential difference is that in the regular episodes, which will always be free to listen to, will be a bit of chat from me and the stories, just as we have in the setup now. In the premium episodes, we will still have stories from Writing Battle, but we'll also have interviews with the authors themselves. We'll get inside their brains, get some tips and some experience and feedback on what it's like to write short fiction. And we'll also hear what else these wonderful writers are up to outside of Writing Battle. One of the other features included in the premium subscription will be the chance to have your name picked out of a hat to choose a story to feature on the podcast. Now that will be done every time there's a premium episode. Someone's name will be picked. That story can be your own if you're a writer who takes part in any of the Writing Battle competitions, or you could pick someone else's. That's fine too, just so long as the story hasn't been recorded before, of course, for one of the previous episodes. The full details are on my Patreon. I think that's how I pronounce it. I keep wanting to say Patreon, Patreon. The link to that will be on this description and on my socials and bits and pieces. So if you are interested, do please check it out. On to the first of our 3 supernatural stories today. We have Holding the Line, written and narrated by Andrew Simpson. Now this came from the peer battle, the Raven battle earlier this year, with the 1,000-word limit. Andrew had the paranormal romance genre. His prompts were paranormal romance, entrepreneur, and spiderweb. And I just loved this story the second I came across it. And again, I won't spoil the details. We'll talk about it afterwards. But suffice to say, there's a lot to love in a lot of different ways, packed into under 1,000 words. So, well, I'll let Andrew take it away. It's his. Here we go. This is Holding the Line, written and narrated by Andrew Simpson.
The call centre hummed with effervescent voices and glowed rainbow bright with motivational posters, luxurious incentives, and lush tropical plants. And still it reeked of despair. Malrec reclined in a spiderweb, stretched between the computer cables and a faded post-it, smile scratched across it in desperation. The web suited him. If he were honest, which admittedly was strange for a demon, he needed the lie down. He felt weak, and an emptiness hung where the fire in his belly should have been. Every other dead-eyed soul in the call centre carried a jittering amber fiend on their weary shoulders, flaming tails twisting around necks, claws digging into throats, each riding their human, utterly unseen, and rifling greedily through every flicker of thought. But Malrec was content on his web. He had Janet. She was his, and she was plenty. Janet's slender fingers darted across the keys, a shorthand she'd mastered for sales. Then she stopped, delicate fists tightening. "I'm sorry, sir, but this is a limited time offer." A dismissal cracked through the headset, then a click. Janet drew a shuddering breath, plump cheeks trembling, brave eyes fixed on the ceiling tiles. That's when Malrec felt it. Rage. That sweet nectar of humanity was what he'd been sent here to collect, and Janet was overflowing with an intoxicating brew. Sure, the frustration of not selling another Food-O-Matic or hair in a can was a juicy nugget, but the deeper shame of selling somebody else's junk products, that was the goldmine. But Malrec let her keep her anger and watched her recover, straightening her headset, smoothing her full-bodied hair, resetting her sparkling spectacles. Most humans were riddled with sin, greed and lust, and well, all 7 if you counted. But Janet, the 57-year-old call center operator, was a pure soul who kept turning up despite what life threw at her. Again, her face twisted at a blaring voice, some bully demanding to be taken off the database. She reached, was going to rip off, snap the headset in two. Malrec saw the reaction form in her mind. Instead, he held out his claws and stole just a fraction of that hateful impulse from her, just to soften the edges. That made them both feel a little better, for a time at least. If it wasn't for demons like Malrec taking emotions from humans, easing their suffering, as the big boss liked to call it, they'd bloody explode. Also, the officially sanctioned directive explained. But Malrec wasn't like other demons, blindly following orders and siphoning every drop of emotion without considering the consequences. He was Malrec, human emotional load limiter, 5th cycle, and he'd been doing this long enough to know that humans don't break from feeling emotions. What snaps them clean into is not feeling anything at all. Rob them of anger, shame, grief, and sooner or later they crack, jump off something high, or take too many pills, or... Malrec didn't like to think about it. Besides, he really liked Janet. She was nice, for a human. Janet's display included a queue that wasn't shrinking, and a flashing commission tally that wasn't growing. Her headset was ringing again, drowning her few moments of peace in the tone she now heard in her sleep. This was when the memories surfaced. Reminders of what could have been. The turtle. Her idea. Her beautiful, stupid, over-engineered dog poo collecting robot. She'd launched it with the confidence of somebody who had never made a monumental mistake. A rushed loan, a supplier she'd never met, some cheap marketing, and presto, she was shipping the turd-eating turtles faster than a Labrador could fill a yard. Unfortunately, they did not behave. Even Malrec, who knew a little something about possession, was impressed by the turtles' nihilism. They flung poo through open sunroofs, onto barbecues, into pools. One particularly nasty report involved a punch bowl and a nearsighted grandmother. The refund requests came first, then the complaints, then the lawyers. By the time the insurance company walked away, Janet was already done. The turtle was gone, so were her savings, and all the people who said they believed in her. Malrec was all Janet had left, and if he were honest, and he was too weak not to be, Janet was all Malrec had too. "Stop calling me," Malrec heard. Head in her hands, toes curling in her shoes, Janet fought the tremble in her lip, the sting in her eyes. The bright memory of unboxing that first turtle faded, replaced by the hard math of her bank balance and mounting commitments. This was the good stuff, the painful, self-inflicted grief that comes from selling out your dreams for $13.75 an hour. Malrec could have lived like a 7th circle duke on emotions like this, but Janet wouldn't have lived much longer without them. If she didn't feel this, she'd never heal. It wasn't the big boss's plans, and Malrec's own targets for the month were already shot. Worse, the colour was draining from his scaly body. If he kept letting Janet have her feelings, he reckoned he'd be done for, and soon. Malrec shuddered. He felt cold, which was strange for a demon, but if he were honest, and he found himself doing that more and more around Janet, he didn't want a world that didn't have her in it. Take too much emotion and she'd break. Take too little and he'd fade, be replaced by someone efficient and cruel. There was no way they'd like Janet as much as he did. She reached for a tissue, dabbed at her tears. She couldn't remember the last time she'd cried. Until now, Malrec hadn't let her. He watched her have it. She needed it more than he did. And he stayed. For her. Again. In the spiderweb, Malrec closed his eyes and held the line. By morning, he'd need to sup a little of her self-loathing. Just enough to make it through another day.
Just love that story. Just love it. It's so clever. The parallels between Malrec and Janet and Malrec, both doing their thing in jobs they may not have the most positive feelings in the world about, and there's a really strange, lovely connection between the two, even though one is completely unaware of the other's existence. I really like the supernatural take on the negative emotions being drained away from humans, and how Malrec's dilemma plays out there. And I can't express to you how much I enjoyed the turtle. Aside from the very human aspect of someone biting off more than they can chew, and oh my word, just the idea of these turtles being mischievous, borderline malevolent, and oh gosh, the nearsighted grandmother with the flying dog poo, just hilarious. Very, very funny, really nice job, Andrew. This got to the thrilling 32 in that battle, so the last 32 out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of entrants, and I'm sure you'll agree with me that Andrew has done a very, very good job there. Moving on to our second story today. This is Where Trees Once Dreamt of Walking, and that is from the very first battle of 2026. And this story is by Michael Kaukeano. Michael is a writing battle veteran, very high standard of writing, many, many good stories over the years that I've seen. And he goes to some very interesting places. Again, we'll talk more afterwards rather than spoil any of the details in advance. So, Michael's prompts were biopunk, daydreamer, and dreamcatcher. There's a nice little match-up between those last two, obviously, with the dreams, so it's no surprise that he went down the idea of having dreams as a significant feature. Michael has narrated this himself, so I'm going to step back and let him do his thing. This is Michael Kaukeano with Where Trees Once Dreamt of Walking.
Gordon drove through the depressed countryside with a red can of gasoline sloshing in his truck bed and nothing but a sad contempt beating in his chest. A stand of bare poplars clattered together on a dark hillside. A yellow-brown field of uncut wheat sagged under the frost, and a pitted dirt road delivered him to an unpainted, rotting fence and a dilapidated double-wide trailer. Of course, here, in the middle of nowhere, blight had taken root in one of these goddamned kids. His tires crunched to rest at a pine gate, pitted with age. An old man with cut-off sleeves stepped from the porch, bracing one pale, spotted arm across the corrugated awning. His posture not welcoming, but a habit, a redneck warning. A boy, bone-thin, sat cross-legged on the red earth, bare-chested in the cold, eyes fixed dumbly on the sinking sun. Gordon climbed out, fetched the gas can, took a deep breath before stepping toward the fence. The work never troubled him. It was the long, bumpy drive, the wheeze in his lungs, the ache in his back. He twisted and popped his spine, puffed his inhaler, and told himself to lose some fucking weight. The old man spat, and it stuck to his stubble. "What do you want?" "Controlled burn," Gordon said, swinging through the unlatched gate. Observing the man's incomprehension, he added, "I'm here to kill the boy, to torch the blight inside him." "You ain't torching nothing." The old man stepped from the porch into the light, muscles wiry beneath thin skin. Gordon raised the can overhead, sparked his lighter. He knew the old man was stronger than him, but he seemed dumber than shit. "I swear I'll spill this on us both if you move." The old man didn't flinch. "The hell you really here for?" Gordon lowered the can. "Mercy, maybe. You know it'll spread, if it keeps growing. This is gonna be every child." The old man looked over at the boy. Gordon continued, You think I'm the only one burning? This is for all of us. The old man nodded, slow. I know. What's his name? Twig. The toe of his boot dug into the red dirt. On account of his skinny arms. Then, with shame, he added, and the wood, of course. Up close, Gordon saw how the bark had marked the boy's skin, nascent leaves budding on his chest like sores. He seemed rooted, hollowed out. Gordon remembered the headlines. Men who feed on light. Photosynthesizing farmhands. He shook his head. How long's he been out here? A week, maybe? Gordon knelt, grunting loudly over his complaining joints. Old Man was probably a carrier, or at least whoever fathered the boy was. Adults caught the blight, never showing symptoms, but their children were born with it, and they always changed. He set the can down, waited. Twig spoke without breaking his gaze at the sun. What do you suppose trees dream of? I don't know, Gordon said. Do they dream? I dream. I'm dreaming now. About what? Walking somewhere? Anywhere? Gordon rose to his feet, dusted his hands. Now let's go. I'll walk you to the poplars out there. He gestured to the dark hillside. Farther, if you want. The boy stayed still. The breeze lifted the scent of the gasoline. Come on, Gordon pulled, gentle at first. No, Twig said. I can't. The old man shouted. That won't work. He's rooted. Gordon pulled harder, back aching, to show the boy his stubborn reality, that he'd never walk again. And this can of gasoline and 5 minutes burning was better than dreaming forever in vain. With a final, cursing grunt, Gordon jerked and fell backwards as wood groaned and snapped like thunder. Twig screamed. Gordon could see the roots that had burrowed into the earth. Some had broken when he pulled. Some went deep from Twig into the dark soil. Without warning, the old man kicked Gordon from behind, sending him sprawling onto his belly. The old man dragged Gordon through the dust away from Twig. His fists struck Gordon like stones. I'd rather we all vanish if it means sparing my boy this kind of pain, the old man grunted. I'd rather see 1,000,000 kids infected with this blight than let another man like you save them. Gordon tasted his blood mixed with the iron-red soil, smelled the gas before it poured on him, saw the old man standing tall, with the can held high. Mercy, Gordon begged, and the old man sparked the lighter. Years passed. Rings grew. Twigs stood, a tree in an expanding forest of his kin. The forest spread across the world, a peaceful glade, bereft of men, those merciful and not. The trees stood silent, but not in silence. Their branches drummed in the wind. Their trunks groaned and creaked against their immense weight. Some fell, crashing to the forest floor. A spider danced across Twig's branches, pulling softly its silver strands into an intricate pattern. To catch Twig's dreams, to ease his memory. Twig had been a boy once, long ago, and he dreamt of walking. He could almost remember the pain, Gordon's charred screams and the smoke. For years, Twig dreamt still of the sounds of wind in the leaves, of the grass heavy with the silver shine of frost. A part of him, nestled deep in his heartwood, had cried silently each night, but the spiders in his canopy caught his bad dreams in their webs, and with the morning dew, the dreams evaporated in the rising sunlight until, over many years, Twig stood content, fed by the sun, by the rain, by the earth. He never again dreamed of walking. He never again dreamed. No trees dreamt in an unthinking world. The sun moved unfeeling over the sloping landscape. A thicket of birch bent low as the wind took from them their crimson leaves. The forest stood where once there were children. The forest stood.
It's a story that really gets under your skin, and that is no pun intended there, with the blight and the wood and the trees and the growth and the terrifying fate of humanity outlined there. Aside from the really unsettling nature of what's happening with the blight, I really like what Michael's done there with the classic issue of the sacrifice of one for the benefit and the saving of the many. And the old man making it really clear that it's not happening regardless. He's going to prioritise Twig over everybody else, regardless of what that means. And yeah, all of that with the really haunting pain that Twig's in when parts of him snap away from the roots. And the ending where the forest just stood and we're left with the echoes of all the incredibly painful and intense things that happened before. Yeah, it's a story that stays with you. It did extremely well in the biopunk genre back at the beginning of this year. It came second, the runner-up in the entire competition. And it's hard, isn't it, if yours is a story that does so well and just drops off at that final stage there, because on a different day it could have gone either way. The winning story was excellent. This story is excellent. It's just one of those things that happens when we're looking at great pieces of short fiction subjectively and comparing them, almost as if that's the purpose of writing battle. But yes, very well done, Michael. That was really, really strong, and I hope you're proud with how far it got in the competition. Our last story today is still very much a supernatural tale. It is quite different tonally to the last two. It's not subtle, but it is brilliant. It is an absolutely blistering satire, and if I tell you the title, that will immediately set you up with the sort of story you're about to hear. It's by Maverick Jones, and it's called The Shitting Curse. I will say that again in case you think I've mispronounced something. It's called The Shitting Curse. If you are of a sensitive disposition, you may not want to listen to this one, but I tell you what, I've had to pause it several times while editing because it's just so funny. It's just so bonkers, and it is a really broad satire and takedown of, again, I won't spoil too much because you're introduced to the character very early on, but the main character in this is named Befri Jesus, and I'll let you make of that what you will. It's narrated by Ben O'Neill, who's done a fantastic job here of bringing out the crazy comedy of this. So here we go. I hope you enjoy it. If you go with it, you absolutely will. I have been laughing my head off listening to this and then being ashamed of myself. But you know what? That's okay. It's a very well written story. I hope you enjoy it. I'm sure you will. This is The Shitting Curse by Maverick Jones, read by Ben O'Neill.
Do not be fooled, my child. This tale speaks of woe, greed, and of course, shit. The story begins with wealthy businessman Beffrey Jezos. He was the merchant in charge of everything. You name it, he owned it. The whole world ate out of the palm of his hand. He could accomplish anything imaginable. There was only one thing he wanted: more money. So he went looking for his next business venture. One day, while being driven around in his 24-carat solid gold car, he spotted a glorious plot of land, and he immediately halted the car to take a look. His imagination ran wild as he pictured Jezos Suburbia, a beautiful development with gorgeous estates. With these houses would come buyers, which meant more money for Beffrey. Cha-ching! The townsfolk protested this, claiming the land was sacred, and our loved ones are resting here. Beffrey, the ever-cunning man, simply bribed the town mayor with $10 million. He smiled when he handed over his pocket change, while the man fell to his knees and thanked him for the life-altering money. That night, after flying home in his rocket jet, Beffrey buzzed with excitement. He couldn't sleep. Stretching his arms out wide, he got up from his Californian king-size bed to go to the bathroom. Moments after he sat his ass down on the diamond-encrusted toilet, a foul odor punched his nose. He glanced up and yelped in a high-pitched voice. Standing in the corner was a rotted corpse, its flesh wrapped tightly around its skeleton. 2 gaping black holes leaking blood replaced its eyes. Its teeth chittered. Beffrey panted, his heart pounding out of his chest. He reached for the landline next to him and shouted, "Code Red! Code Red! Send security to my location immediately!" Static came through the speaker. A bead of sweat rolled down his back. He spoke again. "Hurry! There's a goddamn intruder! Code Red! Code Red!" No reply came. His blood ran cold, and he looked at the creature and asked, "What in the hell are you?" "I am Malachi," a raspy voice croaked, "protector of the St. Agatha Cemetery." "The what?" Beffrey's face scrunched in confusion. I don't know anything about a cemetery." Malachi tilted his head. "You purchased it today." "Listen, pal," he crossed his arms. "I'm Beffrey Jezos. I need to buy a lot of things to keep my business afloat. You can't expect me to remember them all. Now you get the fuck out of here before I—" "Silence." Beffrey clamped his mouth shut. "I came to warn you. Leave the sacred land be, or I shall curse you myself." Malachi vanished. Beffrey rubbed his eyes and stared daggers into the decorative corner, but it did not return. He dialed into the phone again. A tired voice came through and asked, "Do you need warm milk, Bash?" "Yeah." Beffrey shook himself out of his daze. "I want that and a Xanax. Bring it up here in the next 5 minutes or you're fired." "Yes, sir." He went back to bed and convinced himself it was a whack-ass dream. By the next day, he forgot about the encounter entirely and flew back to begin the creation of Jezos Suburbia. Beffrey pulled the best team away from their Operation More Hospitals project so they could build these houses as fast as possible. How else would he afford his third mansion in Dubai? Initially, the team didn't want to desecrate a gravesite. They changed their minds when he offered triple their hourly rate, and they began leveling the land for construction. It bothered Beffrey that it took 45 minutes for the crew to get started every day due to all of the protesters blocking the worksite. Thankfully, he had his personal militia use tasers and clubs to get those losers out of the way. He was glad he got to lobby the judicial system to rule in favor of businesses having armies. He thought about buying another third-world country as a reward for having such smart ideas. I shall warn you now, it is not wise to act like Beffrey. For you see, things began to take a turn once they started building the mansions. Odd changes began to happen to Beffrey. Specifically, he was starting to shit. A lot. In the beginning, this was only right after every meal. odd, but he shrugged it off as merely having more fiber in his diet. Then, he was shitting nearly 10 times a day. That's way too many shits. Embarrassed, he went to his doctor, but after running every test in the world, they found no results. So Beffrey filed and won a malpractice lawsuit that got them fired, then sought out a different opinion. He saw 17 specialists, but no one could find anything wrong. He was pissed because he spent so much of his hard-earned money to cut through their years-long waiting list. He finally got his answer one night after a rough day of shitting every hour on the dot. He rubbed his eyes as he went for his 23rd shit of the day, praying it was his last. He winced as he sat his aching buttocks on the new cushion toilet, something he had to invest in due to his recent shittings. Even so, it wasn't enough to ease his discomfort, as another turd slid out and tore at the scabs in his asshole. Had enough yet? Beffrey screamed like a little girl. He turned his head to see Malrec in the corner. Prepared this time, he reached over and pressed the panic button he installed and waited for the alarm bells to ring. When nothing happened, he rapidly pressed the button over and over. Grabbing the landline, he yelled, "God damn it! God damn it! What happened to the panic button? Code red! Fucking code fucking red! Get your asses here now!" "Are you done with your tantrum?" Malrec asked. "Oh, fuck right off with you!" Beffrey gave him the finger. "You did this." "Yes," Malrec said. "Fuck you! What did you do to me?" "I gave you the shitting curse." Malrec crossed his withered arms. "I warned you this would happen. You did not listen." "No, you listen to me. I own that land, I do. There's not a single person who can tell me what to do because I have more money than anyone else in the fucking world. I can do whatever the fuck I want. Now fix this, or else..." "Or else what?" Malric's empty eye sockets bored into Beffrey, and it walked 3 steps forward. "What could you possibly do to me? I am already dead." He broke out in a cold sweat as Malrec continued. "I offer you one more chance. Restore the cemetery, and I will end this curse." Beffrey busted out laughing. "Over my dead body? I've invested millions into that property. I need to make that money back and then some." Eerie silence cut through the room. The hairs on Beffrey's arms stood up. Malrec spoke in a deep growl. "Then you shall perish." With that, it vanished once more. Beffrey didn't bother calling security this time. Instead, he sulked back to his bedroom. He hated being told what to do, but most of all, he despised losing money. He couldn't lose this investment, not with this big of a payout. Then a brilliant idea entered his mind. If he didn't eat, he couldn't shit. He reached for his phone and called his nutritionist, telling him to come up for a liquid diet immediately, or they'll be fired. For the next 7 days, he drank only liquid smoothies with artificial nutrients. Over this time, his shits became less frequent. Beffrey was grateful to himself once again for being such a good problem solver. Perfect timing, too, because now he didn't have to miss the grand opening of Jesus Suburbia. He flew in all his top investors, as well as potential renters, to come see the utopia he personally crafted. There was one protester with a sign, "Let the dead rest," standing at the entryway, but he was easy to shove out of the way since he had a cane and was so old. After that, they tied up the red ribbon, set up the microphone, and rolled out the stage for him to give a speech. Beffrey stood and admired all the beautiful mansions. His vision finally came true. The best part? He had yet to shit even once today. He turned to the crowd behind him, spread out his arms, and spoke into the mic. "Welcome to Jesus Suburbia." The audience went wild with cheers. Beffrey smiled and continued. "I want to thank each and every one of you for your support and offer an exclusive deal of 3% off your rent if you list today and 5% if you buy a house." More applause came. One of his security guards came up and gave him a giant pair of golden scissors. He held them above his head to garner even more attention. Then he snipped the red ribbon in half. At that exact moment, Jeffrey felt the familiar pool of a large shit forming in his ass. His face paled. This couldn't be happening. He darted his eyes around until he saw the public bathroom across the street. He barked orders at his security crew to get him through the crowd, then stand guard at the bathroom for any more intruders. It didn't matter, though, because the second he sat down in the stained porcelain toilet, Malachi appeared before him. Jeffrey jumped. Voice shaking, he said, "There is nothing for me to shit. You have no power over me anymore." Malachi didn't speak. It walked toward him until it was inches away, then tapped his forehead. Jeffrey's stomach twisted and turned with nausea. Liquid poured out of his ass in droves. He began to feel faint, so he got up and looked into the toilet bowl. All he saw was blood. Panic set in. He hurriedly tried to hoist up his pants, but something else began to wiggle with a mind of its own out of his asshole. And it wasn't a turd. He fell to his knees and moaned. Jeffrey didn't want to look, but when the mass finally came out, he knew he had no choice. Laying in a puddle on the floor was his large intestines. His mouth gaped open in horror, but he had little time to react before his small intestines came poking out of him. Jeffrey got on his knees and begged, "Please, please don't kill me. I'll do anything, please, please, please." Blood dribbled out of his mouth. His spleen and kidneys were out now, and his liver was twisting through his horribly slashed anal pathway next. He wailed at Malachi's feet. There was nothing he could do as he shat out his stomach, lungs, and heart. Finally, his brain. By the time he was finished, you couldn't recognize him as a person anymore. Just an empty skinned sack of bones with a pile of organs and blood scattered across the floor. Jeffrey Jesus' security guards found what was left of him, with Malachi nowhere in sight. No funeral was held, only a business meeting to determine who got his money. Soon after his passing, officials shut down Jesus Suburbia due to the bizarre uptick in deaths by shitting. It wasn't hard for the townsfolk to put two and two together, so they volunteered their time to tear the houses down and reinstate the St. Agatha Cemetery. I pass this tale as a warning to you. Do not fall victim to greed. It ain't worth shit.
As I said earlier, not subtle, but it is brilliant. And it's a wonderful satire and takedown of that kind of culture of excessive wealth and how maybe some people are treated by the wealthy or seen to be treated or feel they're treated, etc., etc. All wrapped up rather nicely with this terrifying demon that just curses old Beffrey to a truly awful demise. Oh, I got so excited in talking about the shitting curse, I forgot to tell you the prompts in advance. So, this was in the short story competition from a couple of years back now, and the prompts for Maverick were cemetery tale, public bathroom, and merchant. You'll look back on this now and you'll say, of course, that's where Maverick's brain went. Having read cemetery tale, public bathroom, and merchant, naturally I'm going to have a horrible billionaire with no regard for the rest of humanity defecating himself to death in a public bathroom. I don't know why anyone wouldn't think that, frankly, and I'm a little disappointed in myself that I didn't think of it. But seriously, Maverick, it's a really great story. I remember this story from reading it a couple of years back, and it's just bonkers, but in the best way. That story, it got 5 points out of 10, so 5 people chose it in direct competition with other stories when they were judging, and that's not to be sniffed at. That is not to be sniffed at all. But I'm very glad we could give the story another life here on One More Short Story. As I mentioned at the top of the show, do keep an eye out for the One More Short Story premium information on my Patreon. If you're interested in hearing more from the authors themselves, hearing some writing tips and tricks, and being entered into the chance to have your story picked or have a story of your choice picked, and more benefits to come. Yeah, exciting times for the glorious stories of writing battle. Thank you again for listening to One More Short Story with me, Chris Fulwell. We'll see you next time.